Welcome back to Inside Politics. Our guest today, Dr. Thomas Schwartz of Vanderbilt University, talking about the Russian war in Ukraine. Dr. Schwartz, we talk about a lot of positive momentum for Ukraine right now, but the Wall Street Journal is reporting that the U.S. plans to send some special forces into the Ukrainian capital to protect our embassy there. Does that mean they're concerned that Kiev is once again going to be perhaps in some danger and difficulty? Is the war not going as well as perhaps, or they see some signs that they need to take some other action to get some troops in there?
I think it's more likely that this is a cover for sending special forces in to help train Ukrainian forces. I think they can say we have to protect the embassy, but then these forces end up doing something else, namely helping the Ukrainians in their battle.
We also see these reports that life has almost come back to normal in the Ukrainian capital. Mm-hmm. You see some refugees coming back in from Poland. Is this a false spring in this war? Does Ukraine have the upper hand, or are they more likely to be the one to force a settlement on this, or maybe even win this war?
Well, this is a fascinating point. Some 2 million Ukrainians have already come back from Poland, and life in the capital seems to be returning to normal. Even life in Kharkiv has also, which was just recently under that, has started. They've restarted the subway system and that. So it does seem, if it's a false spring, the Russians could, of course, renew their shelling or bombing and the rest, but it's a fascinating commentary on how quickly Ukraine might be able to rebound if there is a ceasefire.
If Putin's goal is to still restore not just the former Soviet Union, but the old Russian Empire, there are other former Soviet republics that are nearby. Might those Soviet republics now decide they're going to try to join NATO, and might therefore Putin feel like he has to widen the war and invade them?
That's certainly a danger. The only two that are really serious in that situation would be Moldova and Georgia as possible NATO candidates. Georgia, of course, has wanted to be in NATO for quite some time, and they were part of their territory was seized by the Russians, and so was Moldova. But I don't think that's likely in the immediate future that NATO will consider those.
Ukraine recently held its first war crimes trial and convicted a Russian tank commander for killing an unarmed man and sentenced him to life in prison. Now, the Russians have Ukrainian prisoners, too. Could they put them on trial, sort of get into a tit-for-tat on these war crimes?
Absolutely. That's what they plan to do. And I think that's going to be one of the things that will, of course, both impede a settlement, but will also be, I think that in the end, there probably will be exchanges.
The Russian foreign minister this week said that Russia is seeking to improve its relationships with China now that relations in the West are not so good. Mm-hmm. At the same time this week, President Biden went to Asia and reiterated that the U.S. will intervene if China invades Taiwan. There's always been some strategic ambiguity about that. Mm-hmm. Did the president mean to say what he said? Some people say it's a change in policy. Does this escalate everything up in terms of the superpowers now being more head-to-head on this, particularly if the Chinese decide to take a more active role?
I think it does. It does create a situation in which China has to make some serious choices in that Russia's invasion of Ukraine and the response of the West, as I think, influenced Biden's thinking that there needs to be a very strict, or that the Chinese need to know that we would act to defend Taiwan. The problem is this does break with the policy, even though there's still the ambiguity in the fact that his spokespeople tried to take back what his comment was. But he said it twice now. So he's made it clear that the United States thinks it's going to act in Taiwan. The Chinese are in alliance with Russia now, in a type of alliance, but they've also seen what happened in the Ukraine, and they've got to weigh that against their other priorities. And I think it's complicated, but on the other hand, I think this is wise from the point of view of the United States foreign policy.
There's a growing implication or concerns about things worldwide. We know there's a lot of inflation going on in this country. It's going on around the world. There's certainly problems with rising fuel costs in this country, $6, $8 gas, but also there's a shortage around the world pretty soon of food. Ukraine was the breadbasket of that part of the world and throughout the world. If the food basket is short over there, it's going to be short around the world, right?
Yes. No, obviously, I think one of the things is that some of these products, it's going to force up prices, and that is one of the consequences of the war, particularly if the Russians, there has been some talk about trying to break the blockade, because the Russians have also been preventing the Ukrainians from exporting. So that's another big issue that will come up in some manner, will be whether the Russian blockade in the Black Sea would be broken.
We have, you mentioned some Ukrainians coming back in, had been refugees going to other countries, but It's been estimated this week that now 100 million, a record number of people that are refugees or displaced people all around the world. Is that going to create problems across the world as well? Because these people are stateless people. That tends to make them unstable. That tends to make the places where they're at unstable.
Yes, it varies by circumstance. Obviously, I think Ukrainians abroad are not necessarily a threat in the manner in which, say, for example, the expulsion of so many Syrians by the Syrian government created a situation in which there is the possibility of actions against Syria by them. I think the displacement of millions of people does, of course, have political effects. They may take a while to be realized, though, and that's the thing that is hard to recognize.
Very shortly, as we wrap up, the U.S. has put a whole raft of sanctions on the Russian economy. McDonald's, Starbucks, lots of American companies have pulled out of there. Are these sanctions having any impact one way or the other on the war? Are they forcing the Russians towards making some concessions to come up with a peace?
I think the sanctions are still going to take a long time to have a real effect. I mean, the real problem, and one which we haven't talked about, is that Ukraine's economy is going to shrink by almost half. The Russian economy is predicted to shrink by about 10 to 15%. In that sense, a long war could also be very draining on Ukraine, and who's going to pay for its rebuilding?
The president said he's going to need $5 billion a month. That's starting to get the war starting to be very, very expensive.
Very.
The Russians might default on their loan, their debt for the first time since the Russian Revolution. What impact is that going to have not only for Russia but worldwide?
That would be quite a statement, and that would be something that would actually very much affect the Chinese. A default on the debts would hurt the Chinese on this, and that's why I think the Russians would be very reluctant to do so.
Dr. Thomas Schwartz, thank you so much for being on the program. I suspect we'll have you back to talk some more about this.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for joining us on Inside Politics. Hope you'll be back here again for a future show. If you can't get enough politics in the meantime, you can go to the Shuttlefund website. You can find my Capitol View commentary there. There's a commentary posted every Friday afternoon. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we'll see you here next time. Goodbye.